At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Ja.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Ja.
Good morning. My name is Priscilla Nyenator. This is a new day. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. A new day is a program where we discuss gender equality or gender justice in our societies. Our conversations cover sexual gender violence, identifying root causes, and seeking to address and generally acceptable practices, healthy religious values and practices, as well as practical global values and systems for women and girls' equal rights. We hope that these kind of conversations contribute to change women and girls, lead to a shift in our culture of impunity. Our work is in currency of our common patrimony, shape of the day we have to engage with as with traditional culture, lead the or our underlying drivers and policy. So we focus on changing minds and attitudes by talking, continuously talking and engaging on these subjects that adversely affect women and girls. Hence, a new day on Focus on Liberia. Today, we're going to be talking with Jane Wanya. She's the founder of Embrace Your Scars, a non-profit committed to uncovering the the despicable evil known as abuse in our society, our culture, and the body of Christ at large. Thank you for joining us today, Jean.
Thank
Welcome to
you.
a new
Thank
day
you
on
for
Focus
having
on
me.
Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I've been following your work. The very first time you launched your ministry, um, yeah, it was just amazing to see such bravery. I think it took a lot of courage, to step up and say, this is what I'm going to do to impact my world for good. So, do you want to start by just telling us first what Embrace Your Scar is, what it is about, what is the meaning of that? Why embrace your scars?
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I'm so grateful to be on this platform today. Yeah, so Embrace Your Scars is it's a mandate. It's a global mandate. It's an assignment. It's a ministry. It's an outreach that was birthed out of my own scars. I was involved in domestic violence for about 5.5 years, and God rescued me, and God saved me to save others. So Embrace Your Scars, it's a global mandate. It's a vision, it's a dream to uncover the lid, because abuse in our community, there's a lid over, if you can imagine like a pot, it's like a lid over a pot. It's a taboo, a topic that people shy away from, and to bring awareness, um, for to make impact, to change the narrative, for us to realize that this is a silent epidemic lurking behind the scenes. And my biggest the work I do is to pretty much bring awareness to the silent epidemic of domestic violence in our communities, in our families. It's been around for so long, and even in the body of Christ at large. Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so um, does Embrace Your Scar only, does that mean only caters to Christian women? Is it a Christian organization? And this is not a judgment. I'm just asking, what is the scope of Embrace Your Scar?
No, it's really helping people find safety, sanity in their relationships. So it helps both men and women and children, because we forget that children are the unsung victims of abuse, domestic abuse. Children are really the unsung, are the people that get affected the most. So it affects. So I do work, help women, children, men. Because according to research, um, I believe it's when it comes to research, 20% of abusers are women and 80% are men. So it affects everybody. So
Wow.
I do reach out to men. I do get DMs from men too that are struggling with this. Oh yeah, it's just that it's the victims are more of women. So
Yeah,
Embrace Stars really, yeah, it really caters to helping humanity rebuild their broken value system, rebuild their broken self-esteem, their broken self-worth. So that's what I do. I help people, humanity, in general, to rebuild their broken value system. Absolutely. And also advocate also for abusers to be held accountable as well. And also pray that also looking for programs to to see for those that want to change. Some abusers want to. So a lot of abusers need to be rehabilitated, and we don't have a lot of programs to help them to change. Yeah. So it's a constant. The conversation doesn't stop. It's a constant. I advocate for so many things. Yeah. But talking about it is a good place to start and bringing awareness.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, can you tell us a little bit more, or just throw a little more light on the name? Is kind of intriguing. I find it it's I find it kind of a little fascinating, if I may say. Why? What is embrace your scar? Like, what does that mean? Does that mean I should embrace abuse? Does that mean tell us what why embrace your scar?
Embrace your scars, like they say, it came out of a place of brokenness for me.
Okay,
It came out of a place of pain. I was, I think God rescued me in 2019. And
okay,
in 2020, God began to speak to me. He said, Jane, do not forget your sisters. And I'm like, what does that mean? So, and so Embrace Your Scars is a name that God gave me specifically. Because,
okay,
to embrace, really, it is really to embrace everything that life has thrown at you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Sometimes someone's watching right now, you didn't go through domestic violence, but you went through something, a trauma, something that, in the past, and you haven't embraced it. You tucked it away somewhere in your brain. Because when we go through trauma, what our brain does is try to suppress it. But
yeah,
fortunately, unhealed pain shows up every day subconsciously.
yeah,
Trauma shows up subconsciously in our everyday decision making.
yeah. That's
So our
true.
life experiences a lot of
Okay,
times detect our personality and our character. So embrace your scars is a message to embrace whatever it is you've been through. Even though it's not abuse, it's not a you didn't been through abuse. Maybe you've been through loss, maybe a loss of a family member that you haven't dealt with, grief, whatever it is, you lost, some kind of loss. Maybe you lost your home to natural disaster or something. You've a lot of us, every single one of us have trauma in our lives, whether we want to admit it or not. And embrace your scars is really a message, to get help, because there is help out there
okay,
to get help. Some people are struggling with suicidal thoughts, depression. So it is really a broader message to get help. Embrace it. Do not be quick to erase your scars. Embrace
okay.
everything that you've been through that sounds as a scar in your life. Embrace it, because when you embrace it, you deal with it. Um, it could be a blueprint for somebody else tomorrow.
Okay.
To be, it's a message that we shouldn't be ashamed of our scars, because we all have scars in one area of our lives or other. We do have scars.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That makes sense. So in other words, you're denying it, your refusal to acknowledge it, to deal with it does not unhappen it happen, whether you acknowledge it or not. And
Yes.
going to stay there. It's like the body keep the scores, right, where the author is talking about trauma issue, that
Hmm.
yeah, as long as you've gone through trauma, your body keep the score. It's just not something that happened yeah, and superficially is there. So you start by acknowledging it happening, and then you
Yeah.
can find a way to heal from it or deal with it in a healthy way. But yours is taking it beyond that point. After I have dealt with scar or trauma, I want to help other people
Hmm.
realize that it's okay. It's not something to be ashamed of, because sometimes, or most times, or maybe all of the time, you're not even the one. You may not even be, you didn't deserve whatever happened. So we should not be made to be ashamed of it if you are a victim or survivor of trauma.
Yes, absolutely.
Good. But now this aspect of your ministry, what we're talking to you about is the domestic violence aspect, correct?
Yes.
The one that works with survivors and victims of domestic violence. So you said something. You said so. I wanted to just move into pivot into something else. I mean, it's related to the same issue, but
Hmm.
you said something about how um it's give me a minute. You said
Hmm.
insufficient. One time you said insufficient and lack of support um from, you say loss of the land is
Hmm.
ineffective in holding perpetrators accountable.
Yes.
Um, but now you mentioned a few minutes ago that I think you're helping, you trying to rehabilitate perpetrators.
So what
Is
I'm
that a
what,
way to hold them accountable?
so what I'm trying to say is, for example, I'm sure a lot of your viewers are maybe Liberians or Africans. Um, Back home, the laws back home don't really work. They don't really work to hold abusers accountable. And that is why they feel entitled to keep hurting other people. So the laws of the land back home, that's what I meant, is it's very porous. It doesn't really hold abusers accountable. And that is why a lot of people, get away with it. So
Mm,
sometimes victims don't even bother reporting because it's like in their minds they're like, what's gonna happen to them? Nothing. So insufficient infrastructure. Also back home, if one thing with domestic abuse, let's not forget that it's a global problem, right? Domestic violence is a global problem. It's not just like that one race. It doesn't care where you come from, your status, economic status. It's a global issue. Every people, all people from different parts of the world deal with domestic violence. Domestic violence is a global issue. It's been around for so long. So, but holding abusers accountable is definitely a way to, start to combat it. And in some parts of the world, not only Africa, a lot of places, part of India, a lot of the third world countries, there's not enough infrastructure. The laws don't really hold them accountable. So,
okay, so when you say back home, you're talking about a specific part where you come from. Is that the case? And then where would that be?
like, I mean, Africa, let's take Africa, for example, the African continent, for example, the laws back home doesn't really work except you have money. So,
Okay, the reason why I was asking was because usually I like to contain situations because Africa is huge. So I
yes.
thought there was something specific, like a specific part, if you mean back home, whether it's Ghana, whether it's Guinea, you're from Nigeria, or you're from Liberia, and but okay, we can move on from that, but yeah, that was what I was trying to get. Like, is there a specific place where you think there is an issue with enforcement of the law? I know in Liberia we have this situation, we've been talking about it, where impunity, the culture of impunity, creates this the festering of rampant abuse, domestic abuse. So I
Hmm.
thought that was the case. That's what I was trying to probe. Like, if you're talking about back home, where exactly?
Well, I mean, and, a lot of the African countries, like for example, let's take Nigeria as an example. A lot of abusers don't go to jail for abusing
Okay.
their spouses. That's what I mean.
Okay.
They don't go to they don't get prosecuted.
Okay.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then you said insufficient what and lack of support uh from the African community
Yes.
holds victims back from coming forward. What do you mean? Again, I'll be going back there because Africa is really huge. So uh, if you're saying a lack of support from the African community, if somebody listening in Liberia right now, what how should they interpret this?
For example, let's take our African community here, even in the
Oh, you mean
diaspora.
the diaspora?
Yeah, the diaspora. That's what I mean. The diaspora. Yeah, there's not a lot of support. A lot of people are suffering, even in the diaspora. Our people with this issue, and there's not a lot of. If, for example, even in the churches, we don't talk about this at all in the churches. In our churches, We don't talk about this in our churches a lot. A lot of our churches are not really safe places that discuss abuse. So that's what I mean by that. Yeah.
Okay. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Um. All right. So abusers feel entitled and superior over women. Again, these are just points that I'm trying to get from you, because those are points that you raised before. So just so that our listeners are a little informed about
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean, what do you mean by this point. So you want to throw light on that point, like abusers feel entitled and superior
Yeah,
over women.
a lot of people still believe that it's a man's world, right? So there's a lot of back home. Sorry, back then, patriarchy was the order of the day, right? So a lot of women, it took us a long time. It took us a long time to to hammer, to kind of make the point that of equality, I would say, amongst our people. Equality amongst our people, that a lot of people see the man as superior over the woman, and that's what a lot of abusers feel entitled. They feel very entitled, so and they feel very entitled to abuse women. So we have to have a mindset change, kind of a change in narrative, if you will. That's what I mean by that. So there's a
Okay.
lot of work to be done in this area. There's a lot of work to be done in this area of domestic abuse. There's a lot of work to
Okay.
be done. We still have a long way to go.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I totally agree with
Mm-hmm.
you. It's a man's world. That one for sure. We know we live in a man's world. I mean, even in all sort of ways, patriarchy permeates our society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, our places of work, the home, in the streets. Man is the standard and for the measurement of our humanity. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, of course, that one we know it for sure. Uh, um, and you had a point where you say enablers. There are people who enable abusers. So there are abusers, and then there are enablers of abuse as well.
Yes.
Correct? Is that
Yeah.
what
So,
you're
so let me
saying?
let me show let me throw light on that.
Okay.
Um, so there's a term. There's a term called flying monkeys. Women, these are women that shame other women, shame survivors and victims from speaking out. They try to shut them up. Um, there's a lot of women out there that fit in. They call them flying monkeys. If you've ever heard the word flying monkeys, they also refer to them as princesses of patriarchy. So these are women that shame survivors or shame victims from speaking out. They discourage people from coming out to talk about this. And also, they try to protect the abusers from being held accountable. There's a lot of women, that prevent victims or survivors from speaking out. They try to shame. Because when you do that, you re-victimize these people from speaking out. So there's a lot of women out there that we refer to as flying monkeys. We refer to them as princesses of patriarchy. They try to cover up for the abuser. That's what I
What
mean by
would what would something like that look like? Give us some instances or examples. I just really want you to elaborate on these points that you're raising.
Okay. For example, in our churches, I use the church as a body of Christ, right? In our churches, sometimes maybe someone might come out to say, this is what I'm going through at my home. And a lot of instances, some women in the church will say, no, 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 you can't talk about this. Protect your husband. Protect his image. It happens a lot in our society. Or sometimes even neighbors, even maybe even out there, even neighbors, people in the community, like let's say, for example, if I belong to a Nigerian association, right? Let's say, for example, here in Texas, I belong to an association of Nigerians, right? And I'm just giving an example, or someone from Liberia, maybe they belong to an association, you know, and they come out to say, this is what I'm going through in my home. A lot of times, a lot of women will try to shut that person up. They say, oh, don't worry, you can handle this, privately, with your husband, you can work it out. They try to, to discourage victims from coming out to speak out against this matter. And what I realized, actually, the truth is, a lot of these women that try to shame survivors or victims, if you look deep, they are also going through it themselves. They are also going through it themselves, but they don't have the boldness to seek help. Because really, nobody in their right minds should condone abuse.
Or should cover it up.
But a lot of women out there that we refer to as flying monkeys or princesses of patriarchy, they try to cover up for the abuser and try to shame the victims and survivors. That's what I mean by that.
Okay. I feel like, and I get your point, Jane, but I feel like sometimes we tend to excuse or take the light off men when we point fingers at women. Not to make excuses or not to dismiss the point you made. I got it. But I'm thinking, you said 80% of abusers are men. Why are we not focusing on, because that's almost 100%.
Yep.
Why are we not focusing on the abusers, and then we tend to look for enablers or people, women, we say, you are the one covering it. But I agree with you that, in a church or in some spaces, there are enforcers of the patriarchy that would be like, hey, this is how it's been, so you need to keep quiet about it. But also, I know about someone's very close experience where they broke silence for the first time, and they broke silence to a fellow woman, and she was sympathetic, or she showed more empathy, and then she thought her husband was going to understand like her. So she convinced the other lady to share with her husband. She said, what you just explained to me, hold on. She called the husband, and this lady was like, yeah, no, I trust you. That's why I came to you. I don't, you're the first. I don't have the courage. She said, no, she thought her husband was a safe person, and the husband comes, and this lady goes ahead and share, and the husband gets so mad and re-victimize this woman, and like, you're not supposed to be saying stuff like that about your husband. What is wrong with you? Why are you so, and just shut this lady down. And it took her another almost 2 years to get over that. So I feel that sometimes maybe we concentrate, or we unfairly accuse women for men wrong, or maybe I may be wrong, but I just wanted to for us to explore that other perspective. But I got where you say that, yeah, there are women who are enforcers of the patriarchy.
Yes, absolutely. If we can join together, and that's the essence of this conversation. If we can really put hands join forces to keep talking about this, to keep, raising the awareness that this is a problem. And the thing about domestic violence, let me talk a little bit more about domestic violence. Domestic violence, a lot of people think they think it's physical, right? They think it's only when they hit you. But by the time it gets to hitting you, you're slowly going to your early grave. Because it doesn't start with hitting. No one wakes up one day and hits the spouse or shoots their spouse. It starts with disrespect, constant disrespect, humiliation, verbal abuse. People don't realize that verbal abuse is part of the domestic abuse, right? The manipulation, they feel entitled to cheat. Cheating becomes a lifestyle. They feel entitled to cheat. Mental abuse. They abuse you mentally,
which is emotional abuse.
emotional abuse, even financial abuse. A lot of times they don't do what they're supposed to do in the house.
Make
They
contribution.
withhold finances, financial abuse, and also digital abuse. It's a new age abuse where some abusers will monitor your phones, your laptop, your electronics.
Invasion of your privacy.
Yes, yes, yeah. And people don't realize that all those fall under domestic violence, you know? And when you let it get out of hand, you know what they say, abuse tolerated is abuse aggravated, it only gets worse. The more you tolerate it, the worse it gets. And it then escalates to the hitting, the physical abuse, which is the hitting, the punching, the shooting. Yeah, so.
And then there are some people who never get to that point of being physical. There are some abusers who are so smart they never get to that point. They're very effective with emotional abuse, and based on what I learned from domestic violence and abuse research is that emotional abuse is far more damaging, uh,
Yes.
the invisible scar, than physical abuse or any class or type of the abuses that fall under domestic abuse. So there are some partners or there are some abusers that never get to that point because they don't want to be found out. There may be bruises, but or the thing is not abuse, or they know it's abuse, but they know that's the effective way to get away with it. So they're never going to be physical. They're even never going to be verbal, but they're going to be really abusive.
Manipulative, yes.
They're going to
Yeah.
be really abusive emotionally. I mean, manipulation here is one. More effectively is withholding affection, coercion. They're just a
Constant
lot of,
disrespect, yes. Constantly
yeah,
they
violating your
humiliate
boundaries.
you, yes, everywhere. They yell at you
It's,
in public. Yeah, the constant yelling is worse. Oh yeah.
they
It's
may or they may not yell at you. They're just different forms of way that
mhm.
an abuser will not even raise a voice, but abuse is, carries out abuse. And it
And
has impact on the person that is receiving the abuse.
yeah, and that's why even those are people that if you watch, even in the court, even when you go to court, it's really hard to prove abuse. It's very hard to prove emotional abuse. That is why a lot of people get away with it, because it's very hard
So
to prove emotional abuse, verbal abuse in court. It's very
so
difficult. It's
so that's
very, very hard to prove emotional abuse in court. But you're dying slowly. It affects trauma will show up in your tissues. A lot of people that go through abuse become sick
so
physically.
that So that's why advocates are now, and activists are now, and feminists, womanists, and human rights advocates are now advocating for emotional abuse, especially in a country, at least uh, the latest that I know about, are advocating for a to form part of come on the same level with physical abuse on the laws.
Yeah.
Because yeah, like we all saying, um, it is something that is easily hidden. That's why it's referred to as the invisible scar. So it's there, it's done over time, erodes your self-esteem. And
Mm-hmm.
like I was saying, someone does not have to raise their voice at you. They don't have
Mm-hmm.
to be verbal to be emotionally abusive. Emotional abusers are really skilled. So, and they cause much more damage than any of the other abuses, because it happens over time.
No one sees it.
This
No,
is the one
no one
that
sees it. Yeah, it's invisible.
they say is described as, having a frog in the hot water, or and slowly heating up the water. So because if it was very hot, you jump out. So it's just messing with the temperature so that you don't even realize that you're being boiled until it comes to the point where you're late. So
Mhm.
yeah, and to recover from the trauma of that takes much, much more longer than physical abuse, according
Yeah.
to studies and report, because that one messes with your self-esteem, you as a person. That one violates your over time, your boundaries. But yeah, we have less than an hour, so less than 30 minutes. We're gone half an hour. So let me read some comments, and then we'll come back to how your ministry is helping people, and then what are the different ministries, because I learned that there are other things you are involved in, on besides working with domestic on violence survivors and abusers. And I'm interested in knowing how much impact you've been making with
Mhm.
survivors and abusers, and in other ways you're helping to make this life, this world better for all of us. So hang in there with me. Let's take some comments. uh,
Okay.
Says Miata, says flying monkey is a popular
Term.
psychology term that refers to an enabler of a highly narcissistic person
Yeah.
or someone with narcissistic personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right, thank you, sis Mata. And then she goes again. Most of what you are referring to is systemic in our society,
Mm-hmm.
culturally linked, and have become a norm.
Yes.
Exactly, ma. It's become a norm, unfortunately. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, sadly. She says mental abuse is the use of threats, verbal insults, and other form is
Tactics.
more subtle, just like that, more subtle, and other more subtle tactics to control
Control.
a
It's all
person's
about
way
control.
of
Yes. Yes.
thinking. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad someone gets it. I can go there, Puff. I think she had asked a question earlier. She said, "Are we women in bracket enablers to male dominance in society?" You
Some
want
women, yeah, that's what we mentioned about the flying monkeys. Some women are, yeah. Some women are, and like I said, when we talked about that flying monkeys, the people that enable male dominance. Some women are, unfortunately, absolutely. Even with sexual abuse, of course. For example, with sexual abuse, let's say a couple that has a domestic helper or a nanny, right? Or other forms of abuse. Sometimes the man is abusing the domestic help, the nanny, and the wife knows about it and she keeps quiet. She's an enabler. She's a flying monkey. So some women, like I said, some women do enable this. They protect their husband. They protect their abuser. Absolutely.
okay.
Hmm.
Thank thank you. Sis Meta, I hope that answers your question.
Hmm. Some women are. Some women are, enablers. Some. They victimize survivors and victims. They try to shame them from coming out. But what the sad thing is, these women that enable, they're actually victims. They're suffering in silence. That's just the truth, and they don't know how to come out to seek for help. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So we're down to the last 20 minutes or less. So tell us, you say, how do you help people? Help people privately to rebuild their crushed self-esteem and values. Uh, okay. So you have a group or another side ministry to embrace your scar, referred to as value renovation business. What is that?
Yeah, so I have, Embrace Your Scars is my ministry, but I do have something else, that's kind of tied to it. Because when you go through trauma, when we go through abuse, you're broken, you know, um, your self-worth is diminished, your self-confidence it takes a while to get yourself back again emotionally. So what I do is I work with people privately to renovate their values. Um, when you like example, if you look at the house, for instance, people renovate their houses, right, to make it look better. So what I do is I help people to renovate their broken self-worth, their broken self-esteem, their diminished value system. So that's what I do privately. I help people to renovate those that have been through. Sometimes it's not even only domestic violence, all kinds of trauma, to help them to rediscover who they are again. Because a lot of times, what happens with abuse and trauma is that you lose your self identity, you lose who you are. You don't know who you are anymore, and that is why they say the longer you stay in it, the harder it is to walk away. So what I do is I sit down with people on my platform on Zoom, and I try to help them to rediscover who they are again. Because you lose your self identity. That's once you go through abuse, any kind of trauma, you lose your self confidence. And also to help them because there's a lot of shame that's attached to this, and I don't understand why. And this is the reason why Embrace Your Scars exists. To change that shame narrative. So why are you ashamed? You shouldn't be ashamed because people that go through this should be celebrated. And that's another thing, we don't have enough support for people that go through this. We need to be good support system for other people around us. We're not asking the right questions. A lot of people that are going through this are suffering silently, suffering and smiling because even family members don't even know the right questions to ask. So sometimes when you say the wrong thing to them, they can shut down, right? So a lot of it has to do with education. What I do is I educate people out there. If you have an idea that your loved one is going through this, the first thing to do for them is to believe them. Believe them. Do not doubt what they're telling you. Believe them and be a solid support system for them. So a lot of what I do is I do a lot of education, a lot of teaching. I show you research, and we try to, educate people. Because people are going through this all around us, in the community. When we go to the grocery store, or in the workplace, but people don't know how to really support them. So take them out to lunch, to dinner, encourage them to confide in you. Because the thing is, you want to keep them talking. You don't want them to shut down. So let them give them, if they're going to court, go to court with them, support them, be there for them, provide tangible help. Help them to look for a therapy. If you can afford to pay for some therapy sessions, some part of it, pay for therapy for them. They need counseling. So a lot of what I do, you can reach me right there on the screen privately. This is my email address. Is I try to educate people. I try to help them to, the healing process, because it takes a long time to heal from this, from trauma. So I try to help them to rebuild their broken value system. to try to rediscover who they are again, try to renovate the values, their broken self-worth, self-esteem, their self-confidence. That's what I do
Yeah,
privately. Yeah, absolutely.
that's awesome. That's
Thank
awesome. Yeah, of course. Sounds like I think 2 or 3 years ago when you and I were um communicating about what I do, what I
you.
did with Call to Peace. Sounds
Mm-hmm.
like similar mission what we do there, providing resources, and sometimes it's just emotional resource. It's just being working alongside a survivor, because talking about it renovating people's self-esteem, um most times you got so gaslight that you do not even trust your own judgment, so you need someone to bounce stuff off. That's
Yes,
because one effective way abusers get away with stuff is they isolate the victim.
the
They
isolate.
isolate
Yeah.
you, so
Mm-hmm.
then when you who knew yourself and say this is wrong, and then the abuser gaslights you, after gaslighting you over time, and then you start
You start
distrusting
to question your own reality.
say,
Yeah.
wait, you say, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this is not wrong. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
something is wrong with me. I don't think it's him. And then you start. So if you don't have another perspective, you gradually become more into the distorted perspective of the abuser. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's how you take things and take things and take things. So what we did, what the ministry still does is, yeah, you have someone who you can talk to and say, this is what happened and this is what happened. Do you think I'm overreacting? And you have another perspective besides the man to say, no, that was unacceptable. That's not something that should happen. And you shouldn't be treated like that. So that's what we do. And then we also give you resources if you want to go to a shelter, because some people get stuck because of lack of, especially women, stay-home mothers who are not working, lack of
Oh,
support.
yeah.
Yeah,
Support. That's the number one reason people actually stay. The number one reason people stay in these situations is lack of support. That's very huge. There's no support system. And another thing is a lot of women, and this is why I say, because you lose who you are, you lose yourself, your sense of value. Like you said, a lot of some victims are stay-home moms, not by choice, right? The man would. That's why it's good before you get married, talk about all these things, because someone goes to school, goes to college, get a degree. A lot of these women, they want to work, but the what is it? And the society shamed women as well, because some women walk away and return to their families. Yeah, that's true, and their families send them back too. So a lot of times, there's this victims don't have money. They don't have money, and sometimes they think to themselves, "How am I going to start all over again?" The thought of
yeah,
starting all over is what keeps them there, because they depend on the abuser, and the
yeah,
abuser is abusing them financially, of course, because they have the resources.
yeah.
So
You
that is why it's good to find something to do on your own if you can.
It all boils down to what you said in the beginning when you said, uh, is the patriarchy, because this is a system that have taught all of us that men are breadwinners, as though in the Stone Age where we were hunters and gatherers. Uh,
Hmm.
so, uh, so then you get married. First of all, you've been socialized to strapped to marriage as the highest or ultimate of your existence as a woman. So,
Hmm.
you so want to get married, and then you, like you mentioned, you educated yourself or your parents, the struggle they did that, and then you meet a guy and you got married, and now because the patriarchy say he's the heir or he should be the breadwinner, and then you lose yourself even though you've been preparing to be able to win bread for yourself by going
Hmm.
to school, by to doing, but then you turn over that power. So in a situation where he becomes abusive, then you get stuck because you didn't develop your skill to be self-sufficient. And this is not to blame or shame women, but this is, I'm just sharing the reality of, to just add to what you're saying, some of the one of the main reasons why victims get stuck. Sis Mehta says, in a society shames women as well, because some women walk away and return to their families and the families send them back. And this go feeds back into what I was saying about the society telling you, socializing us, that marriage is the ultimate achievement for you as a woman. So you have failed, even though you achieve a lot. It may not be academically. You may achieve a lot in other ways. You may be a well-established businesswoman, just whatever it is you establish in, maybe not business, maybe NGO, any form of service, but you're
Mhm.
in that area doing so well. But the fact that your relationship failed because someone is not treating you right, and then society say no, that would mean that you have failed in everything, and that would be your shame. So you have to go back. So unfortunately, women get stuck in those kind of situations. But I really agree with you that education is needed. More of this kind of conversation
Education.
are needed.
Yeah, yeah. It's we have a long way to go. I mean, look at how long it took us to get here to know that this is not okay. Because domestic violence, like I said, it's a global problem. It's always been around for a very long time. Let me give you an example. It's an ancient problem. When God told me to start this ministry, God showed me in the Bible the reason why this is an ancient problem. In the book of 1 Samuel 25, if you read the story of Abigail and her husband Nabal, Bible said Nabal was a very wicked and foolish spouse. And I heard the Lord ask me, Jane, how is it like living with a spouse that's wicked and foolish? How is it like? And not only that, Nabal, if you read that story very well, if you read the story of Abigail and Nabal was also a drunk. Can you imagine being abusive and being a drunk? And we know the story very well, how David, watched over Nabal's flock overnight, and David asked for something to eat and he refused, right? But Abigail was a very wise woman. That is why it's good to know who you are. Do not let anybody put you down. Nabal refused to go help give David food, and David was coming to him. And David sent a message that he's going to come and clear all of them, right? Including their flocks, everything. And that servant went and tipped off Abigail. And Abigail knew where everything was. Abigail didn't come across. Of course, Abigail was living with a very difficult man. Bible says Nabal was foolish and wicked. And Abigail knew where the food was. And Abigail saddled the horse, right? Packed up everybody in the house, packed up the food, and went and met David halfway. David was on his way to come and clear Nabal and the whole family, including everybody. And David, we know, it was a man of war, right? But Abigail appeased David. So Abigail knew where all the food was and everything. Abigail didn't say, "Oh, my husband said no, and I don't know where anything is." She knew where everything was. And she got everything ready and went and met David halfway. When we know what happened. What happened was when Abigail got home, Nabal was so drunk, right? Bible says Nabal was partying. So she couldn't even tell Nabal what happened. It was the next day that Abigail told Nabal, this is what happened. And Nabal got very upset. Bible says Nabal got angry and became sick. So as we know it, Bible, people that comment said Nabal probably had a stroke because he was so angry that Abigail went to help David, give David food, that he got sick and he died. So a lot of times when you really break down abuse, it's foolishness and wickedness. And the Lord asked me, Jane, what happens in a home when you live with a spouse that's wicked and foolish? And that was how Nabal died. We know the story how Abigail married David. Abigail was a very smart woman. Abigail knew who she was. Even though she lived with a wicked and foolish spouse, he knew who she was. So the Lord told me, he said, Jane, this area of domestic violence advocacy Doing what you're doing is an ancient problem. Domestic violence is an ancient problem. Women has always been abused, right from the olden days. But back then there was no language for it. But now we have a language for it called domestic abuse, domestic violence. But it's nothing new. It's still the same tactics. It's all about control and dominance. So it's an ancient problem. So it's going to take a lot. It's going to take all hands on deck to keep fighting. And let's not forget, like I mentioned earlier, the children, because these things repeat. That's the reason why these things repeat in a generation. It takes one person to stand up and break it. And I had to stand up for myself. And I say, you know what? Enough is in my family. I said, enough is, I have to stand up and break it in my own generation. So God forbid my children will know very early what abuse is. I'm going to teach them. So God forbid they grow up and find themselves in this situation. It's their choice. They won't say they didn't know. So it takes a lot of courage to break the cycle. It's very, very cyclical in nature. Trauma, abuse, cycles. You have to stop it on your own and say enough is enough.
I wanted to give you a chance. But you just said something. I don't want to miss that as we wrap up. You said tomorrow my children wouldn't say they didn't know. That just brought to my mind how most times mothers can be like, and the thing is the right thing though. So if any mother is listening in our situation, I'm not shaming you, but there are other people who have opposite response to what Jane had in her situation and say, no, I had to make a decision so that my children can see my example and then make their own decision tomorrow. Then on the flip side, there are other people who in the situation that you were in will be like, oh, I'm staying and condoning the abuse, because of my children. And then, other advocates can be like, okay, then what message are you giving your children that abuse is okay, that you just stay on? And
because they are watching. The children, whoever that's watching this broadcast, I want to encourage you. If you're going through this, don't forget that your children are watching. Whatever side of the pendulum you decide to swing. If you decide to stay in that situation, you are teaching your children that it's okay to stay. It's okay to tolerate. It's okay to be abused, right? So whatever side you swing on, don't forget that the children are the unsung victims of domestic abuse, because a lot of times they will repeat what you are modeling to them. Because remember, we are models, right? The children are.
What do you do, Jim, if you don't have any means? I mean, you want to go, you're not staying for the children, but you cannot afford. Like you and I already identify economic factor issue as a factor for people to stay. What do you do if you don't have any source or alternative source of income and you rely on your abuser?
There's a lot of people like that out there, with no resource.
Or no other. I mean, it's just only for us to and think about. You don't have to come, because I don't expect you to have all the answers.
What I would say is look for someone that can believe in you. Somebody out there will believe you. And it's really hard, especially as maybe you're an immigrant in a foreign land. Look for another thing I forgot to mention is your association, people that you relate with. Find friends that can help you. Because people that you associate with is huge in this area of domestic violence. So look for somebody, a friend you can confide in. As I said earlier, there's a lot of shame that's attached to abuse. But you need to be able to break that. What are you ashamed of? We need to be able to celebrate these people. We need to encourage them. So, maybe you belong to maybe you're a Muslim, or you're a person of faith. There should be, as an association you belong to, something like maybe you're a Buddhist, maybe a temple. There should be an association you belong to that you can be able to find someone that can believe you.
Okay.
You can find support. There's support out there. You just have to look for it. You have to cry out for help. A lot of times, the issue is people don't cry out for help.
Yeah.
Cry out for help, and there's by the grace of God, somebody out there will be able to help you.
Okay. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah,
So,
do not suffer in silence. That's my message. Do not suffer in silence, because your life is worth so much more than you can think.
yeah.
Do not
Yeah.
suffer in silence because your kids are watching.
Thank
Do it
you.
for your children. Do it for them. So for those that say, I'm saying for my children, no, you're actually hurting your children. You're actually damaging your kids the more by staying and trying to take it out. And another thing I wanted to say for the abusers is that because the abusers themselves, they need help. There is also help for the abusers as well. There's some abusers that want to change. Leave room for redemption. There's some there's some abusers out there. If you want to change, there is room for change. There's always, because this my story has a lot to do with redemption story. When you can be redeemed. I believe you can be redeemed. We serve a God of many chances. So if you listen to me here and you're an abuser, I want to tell you that don't write yourself out. There is still room to correct your wrongs. Because there's been stories where, the abuser went to seek for help and, begin to work on themselves. And hopefully by God's grace, the person that you hurt can get to a place after they get help themselves, can get to a place of where they can forgive you. But you have to be able to earn that. You have to be able to work on yourself, because like I tell people all the time, the person that's doing the abuse themselves, they've been hurt, because hurt people hurt others, right? So if you're listening to me, you're an abuser, you are struggling with narcissism, there is help out there. You have to seek for help. And there's room for reconciliation. When you seek for help, you're working on yourself to change. There is stories where people have divorced and they came back together, but it takes two. We've been taught, and a lot of these things come from a wrong teaching. We've been taught over the years that women alone keep the home, fight for your home. No, it takes two to fight for the home. It takes two to fight for the home. So it takes the man and the woman to make it work.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. You mentioned a lot of things that for us to be able to chew on, and I totally agree with you that we should leave room for redemption. That's what the platform is called, a new day, because uh, as from the beginning we will state we're having this conversation with the hope that there will be shift in mindset and attitude. And yeah, so we know that there will be, we acknowledge that there room for redemption, uh but like you say, people have to be willing to see things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we've been socialized that a guy can chase a girl and be nice from the beginning to win the girl as long as he wins her, and then he just relaxes and leaves the rest of her, everything to her to work out the relationship, and will not do much to pull his weight in the relationship. Then when it comes to Sally, when it comes to marriage, and then now they keep telling you, no, it's a woman who's supposed to. But like you say, it's two persons that are involved in this. So it's two persons that should make it work. Sally, we put the burden on the woman. She should do this, she should get that done, and she should get this done.
Yeah. It
Uh,
takes two to make it
but
work.
but
It
but
takes
but
two.
but but yeah, there have been success stories about abusers who have gone through to get some help. Some of them, though, they will seek help because it's court mandated. Because I work for and volunteer for just different groups.
Mhm.
With the Global Women, we have this group where that work with batterers program, abusers, men that have been abusers, and they go through the battering program. But some of them are because the court has mandated it to be able to see your children, or to be if you want your wife back because the wife has provided that as a condition. If he wants us to
Mhm.
reconcile and not go for divorce, he has to seek help. Some of them go through it just to go through that and get a clearance. Some of them actually will go through it and then have a change of mind and attitude. Uh,
Yes.
but then we've heard stories. So one of our trainees, there were concerns about men coming up and going to in the coordinators of that battering program and say, hey, all these teachings you are giving me is great. I like that. And I see things differently now. But my concern is I'm going to go back in the community or in the society we live. The society thinks this is how a man should treat a woman. This is how a man should behave. And
Mhm.
I'm going, against or tie. It's just me against an entire society because don't forget we were socialized like that from early. So
We
it's
were raised, yeah, we were raised. See, the
certain
problem
way.
is,
So that's a challenge that
yeah,
some men will be like, yeah, this is good, and I want to change. But what happened when I go to the church? We having men meeting, and the men meeting they don't incorporate women views. They say this is how it should be as a husband in the home. What happened when I attend and I mean he started just listing all the different organs in the society and say these are organizations that inform how we behave even in school when I was a little boy. This is the kind of things we've been trained. So I mean, it's just hard. But we'll continue to have these conversations.
it needs
And
to be
identify
ongoing.
the root
Yeah,
cause is the patriarchy.
yeah.
Um, so as we wrap up, let me just quickly mention says oh, she said what? There is a new movie on Hulu, Lost Childhood, has to do with something on the campus of Sarah Lawrence College.
Oh, yes, I saw this yesterday on the news.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, um, it's on Hulu. I think it was about a child that was abused, a woman that was abused in her as a youth. She lost her youth. Yeah, on Hulu. Can you
Okay.
put that up again? If this is true, there are others. If yeah,
There is a new movie
movie.
on Hulu, Lost Child, who has to do with something on the campus of Sarah Lawrence College. In your leisure, watch it. And
Yeah.
then she says, this is true, but there are other, I don't know, I'm not sure the point she was agreeing with, but I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway. But there are others who either don't believe their children, or I think it's when you were talking about the children being victims, or
Mm-hmm.
they turn a blind eye and a deaf ear if the children have the issues, or they themselves.
Yeah.
Yup, thank you. Someone said it's a great conversation or discussion. Great topic, Beatrice Wilson. So yeah, thank you for staying with us. We're going to wrap up. We have said 1 hour, we're going to 1 hour 15 minutes. So I'm going to just give my sister the chance to close us up. Is there anything that I didn't touch on with you that you want to share with all? Feel free.
Yeah. I just wanted to leave your viewers with my social media handles. To
Okay.
follow me on social media. On Facebook, it's Embrace Your Scars, Embrace Your Scars, one word, .us on Facebook.
Let
And
me
hmm?
let me type it. Go ahead. I'll be
Okay,
typing it.
yeah, embraceyourScars.us. And same for Instagram. My Instagram page is embraceyourScars.us. And TikTok, the same thing too with TikTok. EmbraceyourScars.us. Yeah, for my Facebook, my Instagram, and my TikTok, embraceyourScars.us. And my YouTube is just Embrace Your Scars. Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
Okay.
just Embrace Your Scars. Yeah, please follow me on there. Where I drop short videos, that we learn, because these are teaching that we can learn from. I drop nuggets on there because I want to use this my page. I focus all my I put contents that are relevant to this matter, embrace us, to abuse, and to healing. Healing is it's a journey. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Meata. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
She's
thank you for
a
all you're doing. And there's a lot of work to be done. We have to educate. You have to be able to unlearn, to learn, and to relearn. It's a lot of work to be done in this area. We haven't even started scratching the surface yet.
No,
It's a lot of
no.
work.
And thank you so much for taking your Sunday to come and talk with us. I really, really do appreciate you. Thanks so much, Jean.
Thank
Uh,
you.
we wish you all the best in your ministry as you continue to do what you do in a community with survivors and victims of domestic abuse and other form of trauma.
Yeah,
Um, and helping them to renovate their self-esteem. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Priscilla, for having me. I'm so grateful, and you're doing a lot too with in the community. You're doing a whole lot. So
Yeah.
stay encouraged and keep pushing.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, viewers. Thank you, Sis Miata, and others who have been with us. Thank you for listening, for staying on with us. Have a happy Sunday and happy Super
But
Bowl.
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl viewing, yeah. Let's have fun and enjoy ourselves. Or we'll end with this quote. I have a quote. We live to learn in order to learn to live better. Good. That's a really, 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 really great way to end our broadcast for today. We live to learn to in order to learn to live
Live.
better. It's
Yeah,
a new day. Take care
absolutely.
now. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
We all are